Just as we're still waiting. All right. So it looks like we are up and going. So hi everyone, welcome to the Artist Information Session for the Emerging Writers Festival 2021. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that EWF is based on the lands of the hold on. My apologies, I just needed to mute the tab where I am monitoring YouTube. So I will start again. I would like to acknowledge that EWF is based on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. We acknowledge that First Nations people are the first storytellers of this land and that their sovereignty has never been ceded. We pay our respects to elders past and present and to the elders of the lands that this broadcast reaches. It always was, always will be Aboriginal land. To give a bit of an overview of how this session is going to run, we're going to start with some introductions and then we'll cover what is the Emerging Writers Festival. We'll talk briefly about what EWF 2020 was like, what we think or are planning for EWF 2021 to look like, and then we'll talk about the Open Artist Callout, including what we look for in artist applications, our top tips and our pet peeves for applications. And then we will cover some frequently asked questions. And finally, at the end, we will have a bit of time for questions. So if you have any, you can tweet them to us with the hashtag EWF21, and we will get to them at the end of the conversation. Otherwise, you can also pop them in the comments of this stream and we will get to them at the end. So, hello, my name is Ruby. I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri land. I am the Artistic Director and Co-CEO of the Emerging Writers Festival. Outside of EWF, I have an artistic practice as a writer across various forms, and I'm the co-founder of the Latinx arts collective Yo Soy. I also make zines very occasionally, and with me today is our program coordinator here at EWF, Millie, and Auslan interpreters Jennifer and Linda, who you see on the screen at the moment, from Auslan Stage Left. Welcome, everybody. I will pass over to Millie to introduce us.
Hello. So I'm Millie. As Ruby said, I'm the program coordinator here at the Emerging Writers Festival. I'm also broadcasting today from Wurundjeri land, where sovereignty has never been ceded. Outside of EWF, I'm also a writer myself, mainly working on essays, memoir and fiction in my own time. And we're really excited to be here today to talk about everything to do with your artist applications just before we open our applications tomorrow. And we hope this session will help you feel a bit more prepared and confident in submitting your applications for the festival.
The first thing to note, I guess, is like just by attending or later watching back this session, you are already doing really well in terms of getting your artist application together. So the first thing that we sort of want to talk about briefly is what is the Emerging Writers Festival? So it is, we are one of Australia's most established and well-respected not-for-profit literary festivals. We exist to develop, nurture and promote Australia's new writing talent, creating platforms for connecting writing communities and their audiences. So what separates us from other writers' festivals is that at the core, we are a festival for writers. It's also important to note that we're a development organisation. So that means not only are our artists emerging in their creative practice, and our artists are often our audience and members of our wider literary communities as well, but our staff and the people who make the festival happen are also emerging in their careers as arts workers, be it in an operational role or as part of our programming team like Millie. And this goes for myself and my co-CEO, Alice Muelling, who is our executive director as well. We are emerging in these leadership roles. So that's something that makes EWF a unique organisation and festival. Every year, we run an 11-day festival in mid to late June, and you can stay tuned for the official date and announcements early next year. I'm going to talk briefly about what EWF was like this year. So we had programmed a festival as we normally would to go ahead live in June. And then obviously that wasn't really an option. So a few weeks out from our initial program launch, we made the decision to move our festival online. That meant that we had to reprogram the entire festival, basically. So we moved totally online, which was lucky because for us, we have run the Digital Writers Festival since 2014. So we felt pretty equipped with knowledge and resources to move online. We also shared a lot of those resources around, whether it was via blog posts or in conversations with other organizations and other festivals. But yeah, it meant that we completely reprogrammed the festival to work online. It also meant that people's roles in the organization changed, and so did some of the events. So Millie's role when we initially hired her was to be more of an admin role, organising things like flights and accommodation for interstate artists. Obviously, interstate travel was not a thing, so that was no longer the case, but we also were able to have Millie more involved in the sort of creative side of programming a festival. And then in terms of events, some of those change because sometimes, you know, a digital event, a live event doesn't translate completely directly into the digital space. So, for example, we had a project called Baylis this year, which involved artists writing about songs that were important to them. That was originally going to be a performance event. We decided it was better as a project. So we still had similar event streams to what we usually do: panels, performances, projects, workshops, and of course the National Writers Conference, which is a huge part of the festival every year. But it was that we made it online. And as we look towards next year for EWF 2021, it's likely that we will have a primarily digital festival. It will, and don't hold me to it because obviously things can change. As we know from this year, they can change very quickly. But it's likely to be a hybrid of a few limited live events. We're still figuring it out. So, you know, it's sort of like a boutique selection and mostly online again, quite similar to this year's program. It does open up sort of the scope for artists in sort of regional places and national and interstate, national and international, to appear in the festival where we might not normally have the budget to accommodate that. But we can talk about that in a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. I think that's an important note in terms of programming too, and who can apply for the festival is that, we're really looking for people from all over the continent. It's not just, Melbourne based, because we definitely have more scope to do lots of exciting digital things as well as some things in Melbourne, hopefully. So I guess next we'll sort of talk about what is the open call out and how you can apply to be part of the festival. So if you don't already know, every year we open a call out for emerging writers to submit their applications to be part of the festival. And every year EWF programs about 300 artists from around Australia and is committed to selecting at least 25% of these artists from the open call out. So that's a significant amount of artists that we program and place from the call out. So it's a really, really important part of the curation of the festival. So to give you an example of the sort of numbers, I guess this year we received over 500 applications, which is huge.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Which is great. Every year I think it's getting bigger and bigger, right, Ruby?
Yeah, definitely.
And then because we obviously had to make our program a bit smaller and shorter than originally planned, we programmed about 156 artists in total, with 32% of those being from the open artist call out. So that's about 51 artists from the call out, which out of it 500 doesn't sound like heaps, but it is still significant, and it means that, you know, there are things you can do to make your application stand out amongst all of the ones that we're reading to,
And I think it goes to show, out of that 156, we programmed about 50 artists from the open call out. The best way to get into the festival is to apply. That's how we know you're interested in being in the festival in the first place. And I think that's a really important note to make, is to apply.
Totally. Yeah, because we rely on the open call out to find out who wants to be a part of it, because obviously we want people who are excited and engaged with what's going on. And we can't know everyone. So it's really important for us to hear who's out there and hear about your work and see what you're interested in. Also, I think it's really important because one of the big questions we ask in the application is what you as an artist want to see as part of the festival, because the EWF is a festival for writers, as Ruby said, where the artists are the actual audience. It's really important that we're programming events and conversations that are relevant to you, that are helping you grow as a writer, that are relevant to your interests and the craft of writing. So, we really want to hear from you, not just what you want to do at the festival, but what you want to see and hear about too.
Yeah, what's going to help you develop as a writer and interest you in seeing other people be part of as well is just as important.
Yeah, totally. So our applications are opening, as we said, tomorrow. They're open for a month, closing on Wednesday, the 9th of December at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So please put that date, Wednesday, 9th of December, in your calendars, and make sure you give yourself plenty of time to think about your application and drafting it before submitting it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good sort of place to, go into how we use the call out, but also some things to remember is that, like Millie said, put some time into drafting your application and things like that. You can see the questions before you put in your application, because it is not a race. We don't work on a first in best dressed kind of format. We read every single application. We read every single application many times over between our whole team. So you're not going to be sort of disadvantaged or further advantaged depending on when you apply, just as long as you apply by the deadline. It's kind of, it. So take your time with your application. Like I said earlier, the best chance of being in the festival is by applying through the open call out. And that goes for if you have applied in the past but haven't been successful. I know that can be really disheartening. Millie and I are both artists, writers in our own practice, and we both know that sometimes you apply for things and you don't get them, and that's really discouraging. But like I said, we read every application. We read every application multiple times, and we do really consider every single application. And so when we see someone who reapplies, that's actually really encouraging. And I think there is someone at my door.
Hello, do they want to come and
join? So if you've applied in the past and you haven't gotten in, please apply again, because we love to see people reapplying. It shows that you're still engaged and passionate about writing and your practice. We also have a programming advisory committee, and you can see all the members of that very clearly stated on our website. So they also assist in programming details in terms of people maybe we have not heard of because they haven't applied through the Open Artist Call Out, who might be great for an event. They also, if we sorry, where was I?
PAC, the Program Advisory Committee.
Yeah, great.
They're good at helping us out.
They are great, and they're really great people. Very thorough. So I want to be very clear, we are very confidential. We don't share, obviously we don't share anyone's email addresses, phone numbers, or anything like that. They read people's bios and application answers from our long and short lists and help us sort of select people who would be great for the events that we have in mind, and as well as people who may not be on our radar because they didn't apply. Like Millie said, something that's really helpful is not just what you want to be in, but also what you'd like to attend and be in the audience for. That's just as important and helps us shape the festival. And I think this is probably a good time to talk about what makes a good application and what stands out to us.
Yes.
Programmers, if you wanted to.
Yes, so we've written some tips. Some of them might be obvious, but I think it's always good to go over them and to rethink these sort of things whenever you're submitting an application for anything. And especially because we do have so many limited spots. If you can make it as easy as possible to see where we can place you and make your application stand out, make it really clear, that's going to help us heaps. So the number one tip, pretty basic, it's do your homework. So research us, and being like, if you're watching this right now, that's obviously you doing that. So that's really great and means that you're already ahead of other people who might not be doing that and might not know much about the Emerging Writers Festival. So just like if you were pitching to a lit journal, and this is, it is a pitch, it's you pitching yourself and your work and your ideas for an event and so on. You really want to know who we are, what we do, what we're interested in. And I think it's really obvious when you can see someone who's applied who's really thought about those things, and it's also really obvious when someone hasn't at all. So even if you haven't been to any EWFs before, and I would say why, you can go and look at it online, especially this year. Like we have archived events, online. We have lots of projects you can go and look at. You can look at the program from this year. You can look at the artists, what sort of things they did. So go and find out. I think that'll really help you see what sort of events we're interested in, but also what's maybe been programmed heaps before too. So you probably don't want to be pitching an event that's just like something that we did this year or last year. So have a look at what we haven't done and what we have done. And so if you do have an event or idea in mind that is maybe similar to something we've previously done, how is your event different? I would be asking myself, like, why is it important to do it again or to keep talking about this subject if it's something that we've already spoken about? And if we haven't, why is it really important that we do that? And then also, sorry,
I was just going to say, the other side of that, or like, is okay, so we've talked about that thing, what next? Like, it can be related to a topic or an event that we've done before. That's not out of the question, but how do we make it different? How do we take it further? I think is another question to ask yourself.
Totally, because we're all growing, and that's what this festival is all about, is learning and reflecting on our own practice and that of the broader, wider world and general world that we live in. So we're always wanting to further conversations and not have the same conversations, while also welcoming new writers to consider things that maybe they haven't before as well.
Yeah.
So my next tip would be to take your time, take some time to really reflect on your practice as a writer, and what you're interested in, what you think that maybe you could speak about, what you think you have to offer the Emerging Writers Festival before you start your application. So I would go and look at the application form to look at the prompts and really consider them and take your time to think about that. Make some notes, do what you have to do. Ask your friends if you're like, what do I do? Because I know it can be a bit of a nerve-wracking question to go, what do I have to say about things? But you do have things.
And I think the other thing is, this is going to sound really mean, but it happens to me all the time. What are your friends sick of hearing you tell them about? Because that's probably something that you're really interested in and really passionate about, and we want to hear about it. I know that sounds really silly, but it's true. So the thing that you cannot stop talking about is probably something that we'd be keen to hear more about. Sorry, just totally interrupted you because I was like,
no, it's true. That's a really important point, right? It's like we're excited if you're excited, and that really shows. And not just excited, you don't have to be super maybe you're really angry about something and you're like, we need to, why is no one talking about this? So yeah, it can come from whatever place, but we want to hear what it is and why you. So my next important tip is get as specific as you possibly can. So what exactly is it about you, your practice and your work that's unique and that would be interesting and makes you stand out? So if you think about the fact that we're reading through 500 applications, you can start to see similar themes coming through or similar words. So, you know, rather than saying something that's a little bit vague, like, you know, I love poetry, or I love writing about the climate, I would be asking, like, what aspects of like climate change are you interested in writing about, and why you the person at the moment to talk about that. So yeah, like I would say make it as easy as possible for us to know where to place you, because if you've said something, sorry, my mind's just trying to play.
If you said something about mushrooms.
Mushrooms, yes, exactly. Mushrooms,
that we will remember that, you know, and we'll say, hey, that mushroom event that we're planning, this person would be great for that. Or we look through, like, you know, the hundreds of applications that we get. Sorry, I keep moving, by the way. I have bad back, so I just need to keep readjusting. You know, maybe there's 3 people who have been like, you know what, I'm really interested in mushrooms. And we're like,
and the intersections of mushrooms and prose or life writing.
Exactly.
We need to have a performance about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like we're joking, but I have not shut up about mushrooms for about 3 months in the EWF work chat. So
can someone please please Ruby a dream mushroom event? she's waiting for it.
I am.
It's so true, because we remember little notes, so that will stand out. And then when we're just going, oh, who's that mushroom person again, who's really, we're like, oh yes, we got them. That's great. But I would go even further and go, what about mushrooms, and why what is it about your practice that's why are you the mushroom genie?
So interested in them. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. The next tip is be yourself, which sounds a bit corny, but it's so important. I think great apps are the ones where we can hear your voice and you're not trying to sound like someone who you're not, which I know is such an easy temptation, especially if you have, you know, you're feeling a bit nervous or something. But I think you just need to we want to hear who you are and what your practice is about and why you care. So don't think that you have to be super, super formal, but do, you know, be professional. I think present the best version of yourself. Show us your strengths. Show us what you're really proud of. We'd love to read that and see what you're up to. But also tell us if there's something that you really want to work on, and that, you know, how EWF might be able to help you with that. So maybe you've never done a public reading before and you really want to gain that experience, even though you're a little bit nervous. Like, I would love to hear that and go, oh, wow, we can help this person do their first ever public reading. Or maybe you have done a few readings or you've been on a couple panels, but you've never moderated a panel, or you've never done a workshop, and you're sort of at that next stage where you really want to strengthen those skills and work those muscles. So I think, you know, it's important to know that EWF is a place for emerging writers to grow. It's not a place where you're meant to come and share your work in like a fully polished, really experienced way. It's a place to grow, and we want to know how we can help you grow as an emerging writer and artist, not just what you can do for us.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. You know, a lot of emerging writers get their first ever opportunity to read in an audience or be part of a panel through EWF. So I think that that's really important to remember. You don't have to have this huge like CV of like all these events that you've done. That's not really hugely important. What's important is what you're interested in and excited about. I wanted to say also, yeah, in the same vein, if something like you can't stand the thought of performing live, but you have a really great idea for an interactive game, like let us know. We have space for that. You don't have to just do a panel event. You don't have to just do a performance event. Writers at this Writers Festival can encompass so many different aspects of writing and storytelling. It's not just a novel or something like that. Yeah.
That's a really good point. And then, but we also love novels too. We love all different forms. So whatever you, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And my last top tip for your application, as again in every application, is to try to be succinct, clear, and concise. So make sure every sentence you write is there to help your pitch to be part of the festival. You're really welcome to write in dot points. We love dot points, anything that makes it clear and easy to understand the different points. So yeah, just make it easy for us and make it easy for yourself. Like make it the best it can be. You know, basic things. Remember to proofread your application. Remember to make sure you've answered every question.
Yeah.
All of those things that seem obvious that we all forget every now and again.
None of the trick questions are trick questions either. I know sometimes it can kind of feel like that, or like, oh, they're just asking this for no reason. We ask all the questions that we ask for a reason. And if you answer them, you'll have a better chance of being placed in the festival. Like, it's all pretty straightforward stuff. Be succinct, be yourself, be thoughtful, and tell us what you're excited about and by. We do have a few other things to sort of keep in mind, as well as some kind of what not to do's. So like I said, next year, the festival will likely be pretty digital heavy. So if you have a cool thing you'd like to do in that space, let us know. Digital storytelling and experimenting with digital space is something that we're really interested in. So if you, specific pictures, we are super keen on for how to best make the use of the digital space. And like I said earlier, consider how live events work in digital spaces. Maybe they're better off as projects. Or maybe you really want to have a conversation with people who you normally wouldn't be able to. There are maybe 3 writers in completely different places. This could be, who are all writing about the same thing. This could be the place where you say, hey, I want to speak to these 3 writers. I think other people would really benefit from hearing about this topic or this, specific genre or form that we're writing in. That's a great pitch as well. Show us what you've done recently. And by that, I mean, not necessarily bylines. They're not necessarily the most important thing. But what have you enjoyed interacting with, writing, reading, listening to, and learning and working on and with? Feel free to sort of think outside the box, picture something new, something different. The other thing to keep in mind is you can apply as a group or on behalf of a group. We really like to see applications from groups and collectives who would like to present something. So that's always really exciting to get as well. I think this might lead us nicely into what not to do. Our common mistakes and pet peeves when reading the applications. And I don't say any of this to be rude or dismissive. It's just to remind people that we get hundreds of applications. This year we had 500 applications and only 156 spots. So doing these things make it sort of less likely that you will be programmed. The first one is assuming that we know you and your work. And that's for 2 reasons. That is because quite literally our team changes often year to year. So you may have been in EWF before and worked with a producer here and they have gone now, and we have a new member in that role, and a new team member in that role, and that person likely will not know who you are. So if you just say, I'm this person, I've done this, that doesn't give us a lot to go off. It also doesn't demonstrate that you've taken the time to think about the program and the things that you're excited about. I
think it can also read as a little bit arrogant. And I get the, and that can be a bit of a turn off if you're like, me, or I've been in EWF lots of times. I think it's important to note that just because you've been in EWF before, and I think we'll go into this again, it doesn't mean that you're just going to get a spot, all the time. And the other thing I would just add to that is, even though the programming team and, all of our staff at EWF really likes, of course, wants to keep abreast of everything happening across literary communities and what new pieces are being published and stuff, we can't possibly know everything and read everything. So submit as if it's totally new and you're saying who you are.
Yeah. Related to that, saying put me anywhere or I don't mind where I'm programmed is a very common mistake. It makes it really difficult to place you, and we probably won't program you from that because it gives us very little to go off, and a lot of people make that mistake. And I think this is just my personal reflection that maybe it comes down to a bit of imposter syndrome or not wanting to be demanding and things like that. But tell us what you want to do, because rather than saying, oh, just put me anywhere, I'm happy with whatever, we want to know what you're interested in. And we have repeated that many times today, I know, but it's true. It's too general to just say, put me anywhere. We prefer a few ideas or even one really specific one. That is a surefire way to stand out with your application. The other thing is to not sort of, for lack of a better word, better phrase, waffle on about things that aren't specific to your application. So whether that's giving, an entire, I don't know how to say this in a way that isn't rude, life story when it's not applicable to the genre that you're working in or the conversations you want to have and things like that. If it's not relevant to your application and what you're pitching, we likely don't need to read it. And related to that, we would really appreciate it if people were careful when including triggering content in their applications, especially if it's not relevant to the application and what you want to do. And sometimes it is, and that's fine, but just be mindful. And I think the thing that maybe gets forgotten sometimes is that there are people reading these applications. So, yeah. We do love hearing about your work and all the things you've achieved so far. We're always excited about what emerging writers are doing, but your work alone isn't enough to get you into the festival. And this comes back to sort of assuming we know you based off your bylines, based off your previous appearances in EWF. And it also comes back to applications with a specific pitch are always preferred. We love them. If there's an idea for an event or a project and you think EWF is a perfect platform for, let us know. Don't be scared to tell us. Don't just say, put me wherever. Tell us where you want to go and we will try to make it happen if it matches up with the rest of the festival and what we're doing and what other people are sort of interested in. Often there will be sort of trends, as in like sort of similar interests coming up throughout the applications. So it's really great when people share those with us. And I was going to say something else and I've forgotten it completely. So I'm sure it'll come back. But I guess just a reminder, you can send us questions via Twitter using the hashtag EWF21, or you can also pop them in the comments of the live stream. So send us those. But in the meantime, we're going to cover some frequently asked questions. Unless there was anything that you think I have missed, Millie, before we get on to...
No, I think we've covered heaps. Yeah, that's great. So I guess the number one frequently asked question is, what does emerging mean? To which there's so many different answers to that. I think my favorite answer to that I think Izzy used to say a lot was, if you if you think of yourself as emerging, you probably are. If you think you can get something from the Emerging Writers Festival, then this is you. So it can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that you're someone who has never published anything and has just thought, I want to write, I'm really excited. It means that you could be someone who has published, a few things in lit journals or wherever. It could mean someone that's, you've done your first book and that's still new to you. That might mean that we place you somewhere in a little bit more of an established role, such as teaching perhaps, or something in the National Writers Conference to other younger, not younger, that's a really important point actually. I was going to say emerging writers. That emerging writer doesn't necessarily mean young. So obviously there's a common crossover between young writers and emerging writers, but you can be emerging at any age, and it's important to us to have writers of all ages who are starting out. The other thing is that it could also just mean that maybe you're established in one area but you're emerging in another. So maybe you're an established poet and now you're writing your first memoir or screenplay or getting really excited about podcasting. So yeah, you're definitely emerging in that area too, and we want to hear from you. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, but I think it goes nicely into sort of the next question about, can established artists apply? And they can. They will just be programmed in a different, not always, but usually in a different space. If you want to talk about that.
Totally. So I guess a big part of the Emerging Writers Festival has been that we like to get more established writers to do sort of workshops, or we've had writing schools in the past and things like that, to mentor or provide feedback and sessions to more emerging writers. So we're always keen to hear from established writers too who might work really well in that area. So please apply. And that's again, just because you're more established, that doesn't mean don't apply and just assume we'll find you. Like, still please apply, because that's great for us to know that you want to be a part of it.
We get lots of questions throughout the year, through our general email and things like that, of established writers wanting to know how they can become more involved in the festival, and we love that. The easiest way, the easiest way is to apply through the open call out, and you can self-identify in the open call out as an emerging, mid-career or established artist, and that will kind of give us an indication of where to place you, whether it's in the National Writers Conference, whether it's teaching or leading workshops or moderating a panel sometimes, things like that. Totally. I kind of already mentioned it before, but a question that we get is, what if I don't write? What if I'm not? It's funny because, writing's a solitary practice a lot of the time, but what if I'm in a collective? I'm not a solo writer per se, or I work in theatre and I write plays with other people, things like that. Please apply. We have a specific box that you can tick that lets us know that you're applying as part of a group or a collective, and we are very interested in platforming group works, people working and writing collectively. We have a specific stream dedicated to that, which you can find in this year's festival and also 2019's festival, called EWF. So take a look at that and you'll see that that is totally an option. You can also apply on behalf of a collective and as an individual. So you don't have to just do one or the other. Another question is, what if I've applied in the past and I didn't get programmed? We kind of covered this before, but I just want to sort of reassure people that no matter how many applications we get, our programming team reads every single application. We take note of people who apply a number of times, even if they don't get in. So if you didn't get programmed for this year's, that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply for next year. It doesn't mean that we didn't like your application or that we didn't like you or your work. It just means that we couldn't find a place, which really sucks. And there is often a very long list of artists who don't get programmed by about this much. And yeah, so that's that. Please reapply. By that same token, what if I've been an EWF artist before? Do I need to reapply? If you want to be in the festival, yes. So I also want to note that just because you were in it before doesn't mean you will be again. We like to spread the opportunities around and give as many people as possible a chance to be an EWF artist. You know, if you've been an EWF artist for a couple of years, we may not program you, or we might not program you where we would program other emerging artists. We would maybe consider you sort of mid-career, or at least someone who has featured heavily in EWF already, and therefore you may be in sort of more a professional development role in the festival.
Totally. Next question is, I think we sort of covered this. Can I apply if I've never had my work published? Yes. Yes, yeah. Of course. This is a festival where your achievements, the amount of prizes you've won, the amount of bylines you have is not the most important thing. We're way more interested in what you're working towards, what you're working on, what you're curious about, what you're excited about. Obviously we're really excited about your published work as well, if you have that. But yeah, go for it. Please just apply. The next one is, what genres/styles do you accept? And again, I would say everything. So yeah, we love all sorts of storytelling, and our definition of writing is pretty broad. So it's not just fiction and nonfiction. We love to hear from people who are working in audio, who are working in podcasting, who are doing comics, hybrid experimental forms. We consider, all of those sorts of things storytelling. Basically, if your work involves some sort of narrative, and you're interested in being part of the festival, then it's for you. We are really interested in all sorts of forms, and we do really try to make sure that different genres and stuff are being represented across the festival too.
And I think, that goes on to the next question. Is there anything you don't accept? And the answer is we don't accept what I would call the obvious things. Any sort of work that is discriminatory of any kind, so racist, anti-Black, homophobic, transphobic, all of those sort of, and there are many and many more, things don't have a place in EWF. We are a welcoming space for artists. So yeah, I don't really know how else to elaborate. Don't apply with that. Don't be surprised if you don't get in. If you come to us with that. We also are very, we read through the applications, and sometimes, like Millie and I, this is our paid job. This is our job to do that. But sometimes we work with interns or other people who are not paid to read the applications, and we don't want them reading that content. It's not very fair.
We're not going to go further if you've done something. Yeah. So it doesn't need to be there.
Exactly. How long until I find out if I'm successful? So is a big question, and it's a fair question. So applications, like we said, open tomorrow. They're open for a month. They close in December. So we kind of spend January and February reading, March and April programming the festival. So generally the end of March, start of April is when we would ideally like to let people know, but sometimes it can take longer than that. It can be a little bit delayed. This year, for example, was, a bit of a completely different vibe. Like, we had to go back to the open call out after we had basically programmed the event, and we were at the stage where we were going to start inviting people, and then we're like, we have to redo it. So it took a bit longer. Like I said earlier, there are also often artists who only don't get programmed by a tiny bit, and that can sort of delay us getting back. But if we know that we're probably not going to program you this year, we will try to let you know as soon as possible, so you're not waiting around. You will also get an email when you apply that will sort of go a bit more into detail of how long you can expect to wait. I think those are all about frequently asked questions. We have a couple, I think, from the audience now. So we've got one that says, in terms of looking at previous years' programs, where is the best place to find those archives apart from written programs? Is there video footage, etc.? So we archive every festival. So you can find all our previous festivals via our our main website, and everything that was recorded. So obviously some events are not recorded for any number of reasons, but everything that was streamed and recorded is via those websites. So if you go to the program on the website, especially for this year, and DWF, which is Digital Writers Festival, which you can also find via the website, they will be on the event page. So you go to the program, you click the event, and it will be there if they were live streamed or recorded. We also have on SoundCloud previous, and you can access these via the program event pages as well. We have sessions, panels that are recorded there as well. So basically via, I know you said apart from written programs, but the program is where you find the link to the event. You can also check out our YouTube channel as well. Yeah, and we've also popped in our archive programs. Or by we, I mean Alice has popped in our YouTube comments. So thank you for that, Alice. I think that may be where we wrap up.
Beautiful.
So for a quick recap, be yourself. It's not a race. It's not first in best dressed or a competition. Take your time with your application. Think about the possibilities of the digital space. And we actually have a blog post that will follow this conversation. Oh, actually, here we go. We have some more questions. Sorry, I'll just go back to them. Is there a theme to the program where an idea somehow needs to fit into the theme? Digital space was mentioned. Do we somehow need to link our interest to this? That is a great question. We don't theme the festival. So, for example, I'm going to come back to mushrooms. You know, we are not going to run a mushroom Emerging Writers Festival or Emerging Writers Festival 2021 mushrooms. You don't need to link back to a specific theme. Just tell us what you're interested in. When I say the digital space, I just mean, can your idea or something that you're interested in be something that you can talk about in an online setting, like we're talking about it the festival here now? Or would you like to present it as a digital essay or something like that? Yeah, and then we've got, what is the difference between Digital Writers Festival and the main Emerging Writers Festival? You can view the Digital Writers Festival on, and thank you for the mushroom emojis, on the website. Basically, Digital Writers Festival was a festival that we ran between 2014 and 2019 in sort of October, November, late October, early November. So it actually, this time last year, was wrapping up. And it was a festival that we presented online. Emerging Writers Festival is the flagship festival. It is the one that we run every year in mid to late June. The difference is that before this year, Digital Writers Festival was only presented online, and EWF was primarily in person. This year, pandemic, COVID aside, we were already working on how to bring those two together a bit more. And it was just sort of by circumstance that it ended up being a fully digital festival this year. I hope that answers the question, but you can also go back and have a look at the website. I think we're cool to wrap it up. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And if you're watching this back, thank you for watching it back. You're doing a great job in making sure that you stand out with your applications. We're very excited to read them. Like we mentioned, they open tomorrow morning. They're open for a month. So take your time.
Yeah, we can't wait to read them and to see you at the Emerging Writers Festival next year, 2021.
Very excited. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.